To hear this audiobook in full, please visit the first link in the description below. Thank you for your support. History of the Three Internationals, the World Socialist and Communist Movements from 1848 to the present, by William Z. Foster. To Esther. Originally published in 1955, republished in 2014. Printed in the United States of America. Acknowledgements. I wish to thank very much the many comrades who helped in the preparation of this book. There were many who cooperated valuably with their advice, with their loans of important reference materials, and with their careful reading and criticisms of the book proofs, for all of which I am very grateful. I wish especially to express my thanks to Arthur Zipser for his extensive and indispensable research work. William Z. Foster. Part 1. The First International, 1864 to 1876. 1. General economic and political background. The founding in London in 1864 of the International Working Men's Association, the First International, took place in a situation of a rapidly rising tide of capitalist development. The great discovery voyages of the 15th and 16th centuries had given a big stimulus to capitalism by widely extending commerce and the cultivation of many local guild handicrafts. This general impulse was greatly intensified, particularly in England, by the Industrial Revolution. This began in the middle of the 18th century and, according to Friedrich Engels, concluded about 1830. The rapid expansion of capitalism, however, went right on. The whole development marked the beginning of the transformation of society from the agricultural, mercantile basis of feudalism to the industrial basis of capitalism. The Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution, which had its center in England, was marked by a very rapid growth and expansion of the coal, iron, and textile industries, as well as of the railroads. These developments were based upon a whole series of revolutionary inventions. Among the more outstanding were those of Henry Cort in iron-making, of John Kay, James Hargreaves, Richard Arkwright, and Samuel Crompton in devising textile machinery, and of Thomas Newcomen, Richard Watt, and George Stephenson in the invention and application of the steam engine to industry and transportation. A key invention in this great series was the cotton gin by an American, Eli Whitney, in 1793, which provided cheap and abundant cotton for the hungry New English textile industry. Among the more elementary economic effects of the Industrial Revolution were that it shifted production from a hand to a machine basis, substituted huge factories for small workshops, transferred motive power from a wind and water basis to one of steam, revolutionized the transportation system by covering the land with a network of railroads, canals, and roads, and the seas with great fleets of ships, at first wind-driven, but eventually operated by steam, and it developed commerce from primarily a local scale to a world basis. Principally because of its huge supplies of cheap coal and its strategic commercial location, England became the main center of the new industrialization. Between 1720 and 1839, its production of pig iron increased from 25,000 tons to 1,347,000 tons, and whereas in 1764, England imported 4 million pounds of cotton for manufacture, in 1833 it imported 300 million pounds. By the middle of the 19th century, England, producing the bulk of all manufactured goods, had become the workshop of the world. The Industrial Revolution soon spread from England to the continent. In its early stages, France, with many notable inventions to its credit, nearly kept abreast of England, but by the middle of the 19th century, due largely to lack of available coal, France had fallen far behind. The Low Countries, early became important industrial centers, and by 1850, Germany also was well on the way to industrialization. The latter country was handicapped, however, by its unfavorable commercial location, by many feudal hangovers, and also by being periodically overrun by wars. The United States, due eventually to far outstrip England, quickly felt the impulse of the Industrial Revolution. In 1790, the textile industry got underway in New England. By 1805, it had about 4,500, and by 1860, some 5,235,000 spindles in operation. In the meantime, a considerable body of industry, iron, shoe, lumber, shipbuilding, etc., was growing up in the North Atlantic states, but it was not until about 1850 that large-scale industrialization in the United States got going full blast. As for Eastern Europe, it had very little industry at the time the First International was founded, and Asia, Africa, Australia, and Latin America had hardly any at all. The political consolidation of capitalism. With its rapid development of industry and trade, the Industrial Revolution produced a class of rich capitalists, the bourgeoisie, who gradually differentiated themselves from the petty bourgeoisie. This new and powerful class intensified the bitter struggle that nation capitalism had already been developing against the predominant feudal system. Philosophically, economically, politically, and militarily, the capitalists warred against the great feudal landowners, kings, popes, bishops, and nobles. This struggle climaxed in many bourgeois revolutions, fought through by extremely violent civil wars. The long series of bourgeois revolutions eventually extended to all parts of the world, and it has continued on down to our own days. But at the time of the establishment of the First International, the most important of such revolutions that had taken place were those in England, 1649, the United States, 1776, France, 1789, Haiti, 1790, the Spanish colonies in America, 1810, Brazil, 1822, France, 1830, and France, Germany, Austria, Italy, and Hungary, 1848, Italy, 1859, mid-United States, 1861. The general effects of these revolutions, which were eventually to make capitalism world dominant, had been at this time to put capitalists more or less in control of England, Western Europe, and North America. Parallel and interlocked with these bourgeois revolutions, there also went ahead a capitalist-directed process of establishing the modern bourgeois states in Great Britain, the United States, France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, and other countries, in order to hold the working class in subjugation and exploitation, to secure for themselves domination over the respective national markets, and to mobilize the military strength of the nations for war. The capitalists had imperative need for much more definite and well-organized national states, either as republics or constitutional monarchies, than the loose and shifting, and, in Germany and Italy, atomized political regimes characteristic of feudalism. The establishment of the new bourgeois states led to the violent suppression of many smaller peoples, as the Scotch, Welsh, and Irish in Great Britain, and also to the waging of many intense national wars. These wars included, among others, the French and English wars of the 18th century, the American-English wars of 1776 and 1812, the Napoleonic Wars of 1799 to 1850, the several Latin American wars after 1826, the United States-Mexican War of 1846, the Crimean War of 1853, the Franco-Austrian War of 1859, the American Civil War of 1861, and in the immediate years of the setting up of the First International, the Prussian Wars against Denmark in 1864, Austria in 1866, and France in 1870. The capitalist system grew everywhere in the blood and mire of war and revolution.